I stared at my phone screen, the words burning into my retinas like acid. My mother's message was cold, clinical, devastating. We disown you. From now on, talk to my lawyer. Before I could even process the full weight of those words, another notification popped up from my sister Jessica. Her message was somehow worse. You're on your own, followed by a heart emoji. The emoji felt like a slap across my face, mocking everything I'd tried to build, everything I'd sacrificed. I sat there in my modest apartment, surrounded by empty coffee cups and the glow of my laptop screen, feeling the familiar sting of their disappointment. Without hesitation, I typed back a single word. Okay. The Morrison family had always been about appearances. Growing up in our sprawling colonial house in the suburbs of Richmond, Virginia, I learned early that success was measured in dollars, status symbols, and social connections. My father, Robert Morrison, built his reputation as a ruthless corporate executive who turned struggling companies around. My mother, Sarah, orchestrated charity galas that raised millions while cementing our family's position among Virginia's elite social circles. Then there was Jessica, my older sister by 3 years, who seemed to absorb every lesson about ambition and networking that our parents offered. She graduated summa cum laude from Georgetown, earned her MBA from Wharton, and slid seamlessly into a senior position at Morrison & Associates, the investment firm our father had founded 20 years ago. Jessica thrived in their world of power lunches, country club memberships, and calculated social climbing. I was different from day one. While Jessica collected academic awards and leadership positions, I spent my childhood dismantling electronics and rebuilding them better. While she networked at charity events, I taught myself programming languages and dreamed about creating something revolutionary. My parents tolerated my interests as long as my grades remained high, but they never understood why I chose computer science over business administration, why I preferred solving complex algorithms to schmoozing with potential clients. The tension really began after I graduated from Virginia Tech with a degree in computer science and artificial intelligence. Instead of joining the family business like everyone expected, I took a position with a mid-level software company in Richmond. The salary was decent, but nothing spectacular by Morrison standards. My parents viewed it as a phase, something I'd outgrow once I realized that real money and influence lay in finance and investment management. For 3 years, I worked at Dataflow Solutions, learning everything I could about financial technology and automation systems. During evenings and weekends, I worked on my own projects, developing what I believed could revolutionize how investment firms analyzed market trends and managed client portfolios. My family saw my after-hours work as a hobby, something that kept me busy but would never amount to anything substantial. The breaking point came 6 months ago during our traditional Sunday family dinner. The dining room table was set with my mother's finest china, fresh flowers arranged perfectly, everything orchestrated to maintain the image of family harmony. My father had just finished explaining how Morrison & Associates was expanding their client base and needed additional expertise in emerging technologies. "Ford, this is a perfect opportunity for you to finally join the family business," Robert announced, cutting into his perfectly prepared filet mignon. "We need someone who understands technology, and you've had enough time to explore your interests. It's time to get serious about your future." My mother nodded enthusiastically, her diamond earrings catching the chandelier light. "We've been patient, sweetheart. We understand you needed to find yourself. But now it's time to contribute to something meaningful. The firm could really benefit from your technical background." Jessica leaned back in her chair, wearing the satisfied expression she always got when she was about to deliver what she considered constructive criticism. "Ford, you're 27 years old. Most people your age are establishing their careers, building toward partnership tracks, creating real wealth. You're still playing around with computer programs, like some college student." I set down my fork carefully, feeling the familiar weight of their expectations pressing down on me. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm actually planning to leave Dataflow Solutions. I'm launching my own company." The silence that followed was deafening. My father's face turned red, the vein in his temple that always appeared when he was furious beginning to throb visibly. My mother's hand flew to her chest, as if my words had physically wounded her. Jessica actually laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that cut through the tension. "Your own company?" Robert's voice was dangerously quiet. "Doing what?" "Exactly. Building websites for small businesses? Creating mobile apps that nobody uses? I've developed a comprehensive financial technology platform that automates investment strategies using advanced machine learning algorithms. It can analyze market patterns, predict trends, and optimize portfolio management in ways that traditional methods can't match." Jessica snorted derisively. "Ford, do you have any idea how many tech startups fail within the first year? Do you have funding? Do you have clients? Do you have any business experience whatsoever?" "I have 3 years of industry experience, a platform that's already showing remarkable results in beta testing, and enough confidence in my work to bet my career on it." My father stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "This is exactly the kind of irresponsible thinking that's kept you spinning your wheels for years. You have an opportunity to join an established, profitable business with guaranteed income and growth potential. Instead, you want to throw that away for some fantasy about becoming the next Mark Zuckerberg." "Robert, please," my mother interjected, though her voice carried the same disapproval. "Ford, honey, we just want what's best for you. This technology idea might be interesting, but starting a business is incredibly risky. You could lose everything." "Sometimes you have to risk everything to gain everything," I replied, meeting my father's furious gaze. "I believe in what I've created. I believe it can change how the financial industry operates." Jessica shook her head, her expression mixing pity with frustration. "You're delusional, Ford. You've been living in your own little world for so long that you've lost touch with reality. Successful businesses aren't built by dreamers sitting in their apartments writing code. They're built by people who understand markets, relationships, and strategic planning." "Then I guess we'll find out who's right," I said, standing up from the table. "I'm giving my notice at Dataflow next week. I'm committed to making this work." The argument that followed was volcanic. My father accused me of being selfish and immature, throwing away opportunities that most people would kill for. My mother alternated between tears and lectures about family loyalty and financial security. Jessica delivered a devastating assessment of my character, calling me a perpetual adolescent who refused to accept adult responsibilities. When I finally left that night, my father's parting words followed me out the door. "If you quit your job to pursue this ridiculous venture, don't expect any support from this family. We've indulged your fantasies long enough. Either grow up and take the position we're offering, or accept the consequences of your choices." Over the next 6 months, our relationship deteriorated steadily. Every family gathering became an interrogation about my business progress, my financial situation, my long-term plans. When I couldn't provide the concrete metrics they wanted, when I couldn't show them impressive revenue figures or major client contracts, their disappointment grew into open contempt. The text messages that arrived today were the inevitable conclusion of months of mounting tension. They'd given me ultimatums, deadlines, final warnings about getting my life together. When I missed their arbitrary deadlines, when I continued pursuing my doomed startup instead of crawling back to beg for a position at Morrison & Associates, they followed through on their threats. What they didn't realize was that I'd been deliberately hiding my success from them. Every time they asked about my progress, I gave them vague, discouraging answers. Every time they inquired about my finances, I mentioned the challenges and expenses without revealing the growing revenue streams. I let them believe I was struggling, barely getting by, proving their predictions about startup failure. The truth was far different. Quantum Capital Solutions had been operating quietly for 3 years, developing and refining the most sophisticated financial analysis platform in the industry. Major investment firms had begun approaching us about licensing deals. Tech giants were expressing interest in acquisition offers. Tomorrow, we were scheduled to announce our initial public offering, an event that would transform my company from a promising startup into a major player in the financial technology sector. I'd kept my success secret partly to avoid their interference, their attempts to control or redirect my business strategy. But mostly, I'd hidden it to teach them a lesson they desperately needed to learn about judging others, about dismissing dreams they didn't understand, about the dangers of confusing conformity with competence. As I sat in my apartment reading their disownment messages, I realized they'd just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They'd cut ties with me at the exact moment when I was about to become more successful than any of them had ever imagined. Their timing couldn't have been more perfectly ironic. My phone buzzed with an incoming call from Marcus Thompson, my business partner, and the only person who knew the full extent of what we'd built together. Marcus had been my roommate during our senior year at Virginia Tech, and unlike my family, he'd immediately understood the revolutionary potential of my financial algorithms. While my parents saw my work as a hobby, Marcus saw it as the foundation of an empire. "Did you see the Morrison and Associates job posting?" Marcus asked without preamble when I answered his call. I pulled up my laptop and navigated to the employment website he'd referenced. There, posted just 4 hours ago, was a desperate plea from my father's investment firm, seeking immediate help with advanced financial technology solutions and automated trading systems. The posting offered an unusually high salary and emphasized the urgency of the position. "They need exactly what we've built," Marcus continued, and I could hear the amazement in his voice. "Ford, this is incredible timing. They literally disowned you today. And now they're advertising for the exact expertise you've been developing for 3 years." I leaned back in my desk chair, processing the beautiful irony of the situation. "Send me everything you can find about their current financial situation. I want to understand exactly how desperate they are." While Marcus researched Morrison and Associates, I walked around my apartment, really looking at it for the first time in months. To anyone who visited, this place looked like the modest home of a struggling entrepreneur. I deliberately kept it sparse, furnished with secondhand furniture and basic appliances. My wardrobe consisted mainly of jeans and casual shirts, nothing that would suggest significant wealth or success. The truth was that this apartment served as my workspace and cover story, nothing more. My actual residence was a luxury penthouse downtown that I'd purchased 8 months ago under the name of a holding company. The penthouse featured floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the James River, a state-of-the-art home office, and amenities that most people could only dream about owning. More importantly, Quantum Capital Solutions occupied an entire floor of a prestigious office building in Richmond's financial district. Our team of 12 engineers and analysts worked with equipment worth more than most people's houses, developing and refining algorithms that could predict market movements with unprecedented accuracy. We'd attracted talent from major tech companies and investment firms, offering salaries competitive with Silicon Valley standards. Marcus called back within an hour, his voice tight with excitement and concern. "Ford, you need to sit down for this. Morrison and Associates isn't just struggling. They're in complete free fall. Tell me everything. They've lost 60% of their client base over the past 8 months. Their biggest clients left because the firm's investment performance couldn't compete with newer companies using advanced analytics. Your father has been trying to modernize their systems, but he doesn't understand the technology well enough to choose effective solutions." Marcus paused, and I could hear papers shuffling in the background. "It gets worse. They're facing 3 major lawsuits from clients who lost money due to poor investment decisions. Their operating costs are way higher than their current revenue stream. Based on public filings, they have maybe 3 months before they'll be forced into bankruptcy proceedings." The information hit me like a physical blow. Despite everything my family had done, despite their contempt and rejection, I felt a surge of concern for their situation. How bad is their cash flow? Bad enough that your father personally visited 6 different tech companies this week, begging for consultation services. He's offering to pay premium rates for immediate help, but most firms are booked for months in advance. The ones that are available don't have the specific expertise he needs. I stood up and paced to my window, looking out at the city lights while processing this information. "Marcus, send me our latest platform performance data. I want to review exactly what our system could do for a firm like Morrison and Associates." Within minutes, my computer screen filled with charts and graphs demonstrating Quantum Capital Solutions' remarkable track record. Our automated trading algorithms had consistently outperformed traditional investment strategies by significant margins. Clients using our platform had seen portfolio growth rates that exceeded industry standards by 20 to 30%. Most impressively, our predictive models had successfully anticipated and avoided losses during several market downturns that had devastated other firms. "Ford," Marcus said quietly, "our platform could save their business. Not just stabilize it, but make it more profitable than it's ever been. Your family needs exactly what you've created." The irony was overwhelming. For years, my parents had lectured me about practical thinking, realistic planning, and contributing to proven businesses instead of chasing technological fantasies. They dismissed my work as irrelevant to the real world of finance and investment. Now, their survival depended entirely on the technology they'd ridiculed, created by the son they'd just disowned. My phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. "Mr. Morrison, this is David Parker from TechFlow Innovations. Your father contacted our firm today, seeking emergency consultation services. Unfortunately, our earliest availability is 4 months out. However, I thought you might want to know that he seemed extremely distressed and mentioned this was a matter of saving his business." David Parker had been my supervisor during my first year at Dataflow Solutions. He'd always been supportive of my work and had tried to convince me to stay when I gave my notice 6 months ago. Now he was reaching out, apparently concerned about my father's desperate situation. I called David immediately. "This is Ford Morrison. I got your message about my father." "Ford, I've never seen a man look so broken." He spent 2 hours in our office explaining how his firm is hemorrhaging clients because they can't compete with companies using advanced analytics. He kept saying he needed someone who understood both finance and cutting-edge technology. "I wanted to tell him about your startup, but I wasn't sure if you'd want me to reveal that information." "What exactly did he say about the timeline?" "He needs a solution within the next 2 weeks, or they'll lose their 3 remaining major clients. Those accounts represent almost all of their current revenue. If those clients leave, Morrison and Associates will have to close permanently." After ending the call with David, I sat in silence, staring at my phone and contemplating the incredible turn of events. 24 hours ago, my family had viewed me as a failure, a disappointment who refused to accept responsibility. Today, I was the only person in Virginia who possessed the technology that could save everything they'd worked to build. Marcus arrived at my apartment an hour later, carrying printouts of financial reports and market analyses. "I've been thinking about this situation all evening," he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "This isn't just about revenge or proving them wrong. This is about justice." "Explain that." "Your family spent years telling you that your dreams were worthless, that your work had no value in the real world. They disowned you for pursuing the exact path that led to creating something revolutionary. Now they need your help to survive. But they don't even know you're the one who can save them." Marcus spread the financial reports across my coffee table. "Ford, you have the power to write the ending of this story. You can save their business and rebuild your relationship with them, but only on your terms. They'll finally have to acknowledge that you were right about everything." I reviewed the documents Marcus had brought, studying the details of Morrison and Associates' declining performance and the specific technological needs they'd outlined in their job postings. Everything they required was already built into Quantum Capital Solutions' platform. We could implement a customized version of our system that would not only solve their immediate problems, but position them for unprecedented growth. "There's something else," Marcus added, pulling out his phone. "I got a call from Christina Walsh at Pinnacle Investments. They're interested in licensing our technology, and they specifically mentioned that they'd lost confidence in Morrison and Associates as a potential partner because of their outdated systems." Pinnacle Investments was one of the largest investment management firms on the East Coast. They managed portfolios worth billions of dollars and had recently been seeking technology partnerships to enhance their analytical capabilities. If they were willing to work with us, it could transform Quantum Capital Solutions from a promising startup into an industry leader overnight. "Christina wants to schedule a meeting for tomorrow afternoon," She's flying in from New York specifically to discuss partnership opportunities. I looked at Marcus, feeling pieces of a larger strategy beginning to form in my mind. Schedule the meeting. But I want to make one modification to the location. 20 hours after receiving the disownment texts, my phone rang at 6:30 in the morning. The caller ID showed Sarah Morrison, my mother. I let it ring 4 times before answering, wanting to establish that I was no longer at their beck and call. Ford? My mother's voice was shaky, higher pitched than usual. Ford, we need to talk. Can you please come home? It's important. I kept my voice neutral, professional. What's this about, Sarah? The use of her first name instead of Mom clearly rattled her. Honey, please, don't be like this. I know you're hurt, but we have a family emergency. Your father, there's been a situation with the business. I'm sorry to hear that. However, you made it clear yesterday that I'm no longer part of this family. I believe your exact words were that I should talk to your lawyer from now on. Ford, please. I know we said things we didn't mean. We were frustrated and scared, and we took it out on you. But right now, we need your help. The desperation in her voice was unmistakable, but I wasn't ready to give in easily. What kind of help? The business is in trouble. Serious trouble. Your father has been trying to find technology consultants, people who understand financial systems and automation. We hoped you might know someone who could help us. I almost laughed at the cosmic joke of it all. You disowned me for pursuing technology work, and now you're asking me to use my technology connections to save the family business? I know how that sounds. I know it seems hypocritical. But Ford, if we can't find a solution quickly, we're going to lose everything. The house, the business, everything we've built over the past 20 years. My mother's voice broke on the last words, and despite my anger, I felt a pang of sympathy. Sarah Morrison had spent her entire adult life building social connections and maintaining the family's reputation in Richmond's elite circles. The idea of losing their status, their financial security, and their position in the community must be terrifying for her. How bad is the situation? Your father hasn't slept in 3 days. He's been calling every technology company in Virginia, trying to find someone who can modernize our investment systems. We've lost most of our clients because we can't compete with firms that use advanced analytics. The few clients we have left are threatening to leave if we don't show them significant improvements within the next 2 weeks. I walked to my kitchen and poured a cup of coffee, taking my time while my mother waited anxiously for my response. And you think I might know someone who could help? Ford, you work in technology. You must have connections, colleagues who specialize in financial systems. We're willing to pay whatever it takes. We just need someone who understands both finance and cutting-edge technology. The irony was so perfect it almost hurt. I'll see what I can do. But I want to be clear about something. If I help you find a solution, it's not because we're family. You made your position on that very clear yesterday. Ford, we can work through our family issues later. Right now, we just need to save the business. Can you please make some calls? Ask around. See if anyone might be available for an urgent consultation. After ending the call with my mother, I immediately dialed Marcus. It's starting. My mother just called begging for help finding a technology consultant. Perfect timing. I just got off the phone with Christina Walsh from Pinnacle Investments. She's confirmed for this afternoon's meeting, and she's bringing 2 of their senior partners. Ford. They're seriously interested in a major partnership deal. I outlined my plan to Marcus, explaining how I wanted to orchestrate the next 24 hours. By the time our conversation ended, we'd mapped out a strategy that would not only reveal my success to my family, but do it in a way that would maximize their understanding of what they'd thrown away. My phone buzzed with a text message from Jessica. Ford, please call me. This is about Dad's health and the business. We made a mistake yesterday. Instead of calling, I responded with a text. I'll consider helping you find a technology consultant. Meet me at Pinnacle Tower tomorrow at 2 p.m. Conference room 12A. Jessica replied immediately. Thank you. Dad will be so relieved. Should we bring anything? Financial records? System specifications? Bring everything you can about the business's current situation and technology needs. This meeting will determine whether there's a solution available. I spent the rest of the day working with Marcus to prepare for what would be the most important 24 hours of my life. We coordinated with Christina Walsh to ensure that our meeting with Pinnacle Investments would overlap with my family's arrival. We prepared comprehensive presentations about Quantum Capital Solutions' capabilities and track record. Most importantly, we arranged for several of Morrison and Associates' former clients to attend the meeting, ostensibly to discuss their own potential partnerships with our company. David Parker called in the afternoon with an update about my father's increasingly desperate search for help. "Ford, your father came back to our office today. He looked terrible. Like he hasn't slept or eaten properly in days. He's offering double our normal rates for immediate consultation services. I've never seen someone so panicked about a business situation. Did he mention anything specific about the timeline?" He said they have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow afternoon with some potential investors or consultants. He seemed to think this meeting was their last hope for saving the company. The pieces were falling into place perfectly. My family would arrive at Pinnacle Tower expecting to meet with some unknown technology consultant I'd managed to find for them. Instead, they'd discover that I was the consultant, that I'd built the exact solution they needed, and that I was about to become one of the most successful entrepreneurs in Virginia. My phone rang again at 8 p.m. This time it was Jessica, and her voice carried the same desperation I'd heard from my mother. "Ford, I owe you an apology. We all do. The message I sent yesterday was cruel and unfair. I was angry and frustrated, but that's no excuse for treating you that way. I appreciate that, Jessica. Dad's been in the emergency room twice this week with chest pains. The stress of potentially losing the business is literally making him sick. Mom's been crying constantly. We're scared, Ford. Really scared." I felt genuine concern hearing about my father's health problems, but I also recognized the manipulation in Jessica's tone. She was using emotional appeals to try to bring me back into the family fold on their terms. "The meeting I've arranged for tomorrow might provide some solutions. But Jessica, I want you to understand something. I'm not the same person you disowned yesterday. Going forward, our relationship will be based on mutual respect, not family obligation. Of course. Whatever you need. We just want to make this right. We'll see about that tomorrow." After ending the call, I stood in my apartment, looking out at the city lights, thinking about how dramatically everything was about to change. In less than 18 hours, my family would discover that their failure son had created a technology empire, while they'd been lecturing him about responsibility and realistic thinking. Marcus arrived with Chinese takeout and a bottle of champagne. "Tomorrow's going to be interesting," he said, setting the food on my coffee table. Interesting is one word for it. They're about to learn that the son they disowned is the only person in Virginia who can save their business. Are you nervous? I considered the question seriously. No, I'm not nervous. I'm ready. For 3 years, they've treated me like a child who refuses to grow up. Tomorrow, they'll finally see me as I really am. We spent the evening reviewing our presentation materials and coordinating the final details of the meeting. By the time Marcus left at 11 p.m., everything was prepared for what would either be the greatest vindication of my life or a complete disaster. As I lay in bed that night, I thought about the text message I'd sent in response to my family's disownment. Okay, that single word had represented my complete acceptance of their rejection, my willingness to move forward without their approval or support. Tomorrow, they'd learn what I'd built in the space created by that acceptance. My phone buzzed one final time with a text from my father. "Ford, your mother tells me you might have found someone to help us. I want you to know that I'm grateful. Whatever our family disagreements, I appreciate you helping us in our time of need." I stared at the message for several minutes before responding. "You'll meet the consultant tomorrow. I think you'll find the solution very interesting." 24 hours after being disowned by my family, I was about to demonstrate that their greatest mistake was underestimating the son they'd thrown away. At 11 a.m., exactly 26 hours after receiving the disownment texts, my phone rang with a call from my mother. Her voice was frantic, barely controlled. "Ford, thank you so much for arranging this meeting. Can you tell me anything about the consultant we're meeting with? Your father wants to prepare properly. I kept my voice carefully neutral. You'll learn everything you need to know at the meeting. I will say this. The consultant understands your situation completely and has the exact technology you need. Is this person expensive? We're prepared to pay premium rates, but we need to know what kind of investment we're looking at. Cost shouldn't be your primary concern right now. Focus on whether you're prepared to accept the consultant's terms and conditions. There was a pause, and I could hear my mother discussing something with someone in the background, probably my father. Ford, your father wants to know if you've worked with this consultant before. He's concerned about trusting our entire future to someone we don't know. Trust me. This is someone who knows your business intimately and has your family's best interests at heart. After ending the call, I drove to Pinnacle Tower and spent an hour setting up the conference room with Marcus and our technical team. We arranged our presentation materials, tested the audio-visual equipment, and confirmed that our former clients would arrive 30 minutes after the meeting began. Christina Walsh and her team from Pinnacle Investments arrived at 1:30, giving us time to review the partnership terms they were proposing. The numbers were staggering. They wanted to license our technology for an initial fee of $15 million, plus ongoing revenue sharing that could reach hundreds of millions over the next 5 years. Your platform is exactly what the industry needs, Christina explained, reviewing our performance data. We've been searching for this level of analytical sophistication for 3 years. The fact that you've developed it independently, without outside funding or corporate backing, makes it even more impressive. Marcus and I exchanged glances. Christina had no idea that the Morrison family was about to walk into this room, or that they were the same people who'd spent years dismissing the technology she was now praising. At exactly 2 p.m., I heard familiar voices in the hallway outside the conference room. My father's voice was tense with anxiety. My mother's was pitched higher than usual with stress. And Jessica was asking questions about the building's security procedures and parking arrangements. "Are you ready for this?" Marcus whispered. I nodded, feeling a strange calm settle over me. Let's change their lives. My family entered the conference room looking exactly as I'd expected, overdressed for what they thought was a desperate plea for help, carrying multiple folders of financial records and system specifications. My father wore his most expensive suit, the one he reserved for crucial business meetings. My mother had chosen jewelry that suggested wealth and sophistication, even though I knew they were struggling to pay their bills. Jessica carried herself with the forced confidence she always displayed when she was terrified. They stopped dead in their tracks when they saw me sitting at the head of the conference table, wearing a tailored suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary, surrounded by presentation materials branded with the Quantum Capital Solutions logo. "Ford?" My father's voice was barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" I stood up, extending my hand in a professional greeting. "Hello, Robert, Sarah, Jessica. Thank you for coming to discuss Morrison & Associates' technology needs." The confusion on their faces was absolute. They looked around the room, taking in the sophisticated presentation setup, the professional team members, the Pinnacle Investments representatives who were watching this reunion with obvious interest. "I don't understand," my mother said, her voice shaking. "Where's the consultant you arranged for us to meet?" "You're looking at him." I gestured to the presentation screen behind me, which displayed the Quantum Capital Solutions logo and the words Chief Executive Officer, Ford Morrison. For the past 3 years, while you've been lecturing me about responsibility and realistic thinking, I've been building the exact technology platform you now need to save your business. Jessica sank into a chair, her face pale with shock. "This is your company? This whole building? This meeting? All of this is yours?" "Not the entire building. Just 2 floors. We outgrew our original office space 8 months ago." My father looked around the room wildly, as if he was trying to wake up from a confusing dream. "Ford, I don't understand. You work at Dataflow Solutions. You live in that small apartment. How could you possibly—" "I left Dataflow 6 months ago when I received my first major licensing deal. The apartment you know about is my workspace. I kept my living situation private because I wanted to focus on building the business without family interference." Christina Walsh stepped forward, clearly sensing the dramatic nature of what was unfolding. "Excuse me, but are these the Morrison family members who own Morrison and Associates?" "They are," I confirmed. "Robert Morrison is the founder and current CEO. Jessica Morrison is their head of client relations. Sarah Morrison manages their public relations and charity partnerships." Christina's expression shifted to one of professional interest. "How fascinating. We've actually been reviewing Morrison and Associates as a potential partner, but our analysis suggested they lack the technological infrastructure we require for collaboration." The words hit my family like physical blows. Here was a representative from one of the largest investment firms on the East Coast, explaining that they'd been considered and rejected as partners due to their outdated systems. "However," Christina continued, "if Morrison and Associates were to implement Ford's platform, they would immediately become one of the most technologically advanced investment firms in the region. We'd definitely be interested in establishing a partnership under those circumstances." I looked at my family, seeing the realization dawning in their eyes. They were beginning to understand that I wasn't just successful. I was successful enough to save their business and transform it into something more profitable than they'd ever imagined. "Ford." My father's voice was hoarse with emotion. "How is this possible? How did you build all of this?" "I started developing the core algorithms during my final year at Virginia Tech. I refined them during my 3 years at Dataflow. For the past 6 months, I've been scaling the business and preparing for our public offering, which we're announcing next week." Marcus stepped forward with a folder of documents. "Our initial public offering is expected to value Quantum Capital Solutions at approximately $200 million. Ford's controlling stake will make him one of the youngest multimillionaires in Virginia." The silence that followed was deafening. My family stared at me as if I'd transformed into a completely different person before their eyes. In a sense, I had. For the first time in my life, they were seeing me as I truly was. Not a dreamy child chasing impossible fantasies, but a visionary entrepreneur who'd built something extraordinary. "Ford." Jessica's voice was barely audible. "We disowned you yesterday. We told you that your work was worthless, that you needed to grow up and accept reality. And now you're telling us that you're worth approximately $45 million as of this morning's valuation estimates." I finished. "Yes, Jessica, that's exactly what I'm telling you." My mother began crying, not the manipulative tears she sometimes used to get her way, but genuine tears of shock and remorse. "We've been so wrong about everything. So completely wrong. The question now," I said, returning to my seat at the head of the table, "is whether you're ready to discuss the terms under which I might be willing to help save Morrison and Associates." My father leaned forward, his businessman instincts taking over despite his emotional turmoil. "What kind of terms are you talking about?" "Complete restructuring of the company's ownership and management structure. Implementation of my technology platform under an exclusive licensing agreement. Full acknowledgement that your previous assessment of my capabilities and potential was fundamentally incorrect." I paused, letting the weight of those conditions settle in. "Most importantly, a formal apology for the way you've treated me, not just yesterday, but for the past several years." Christina Walsh and her team exchanged glances, clearly recognizing that they were witnessing a family drama that had significant business implications. "Ford, if you're planning to integrate Morrison and Associates with your technology platform, Pinnacle Investments would definitely want to discuss a 3-way partnership arrangement." The offer from Pinnacle had just raised the stakes exponentially. Not only could I save my family's business, I could make it part of a partnership worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But the decision was entirely mine to make, and my family's future depended entirely on whether they were willing to accept my terms. "Ford," my father said quietly, "what do you want from us?" I looked across the conference table at my family, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time in years. They sat there, in their expensive clothing and carefully maintained appearances, but underneath the surface polish, they looked broken. My father's face showed the strain of weeks without proper sleep. My mother's hands shook slightly as she clutched her purse, and Jessica's usual confidence had evaporated entirely. "What I want," I said slowly, "is for you to understand what you've done. Not just yesterday when you disowned me, but for the past 3 years while I was building something revolutionary and you were treating me like a failure. I stood up and walked to the presentation screen, pulling up a series of charts that showed Quantum Capital Solutions' growth trajectory. While you were lecturing me about responsibility, I was creating jobs for 12 highly skilled employees. While you were telling me to be realistic about my future, I was securing contracts with Fortune 500 companies. While you were suggesting that I needed to grow up and join the family business, I was building a business that could buy and sell Morrison and Associates 10 times over. My father stared at the financial projections, his face growing paler with each number. Ford, I had no idea. How were we supposed to know you were this successful if you never told us? Because you never asked the right questions, Robert. Every time we talked about my work, you dismissed it before I could explain what I was actually accomplishing. You made assumptions based on your own limited understanding of technology, and you let those assumptions guide your treatment of me. Jessica finally found her voice, though it was much smaller than her usual confident tone. Ford, we thought we were protecting you. We thought you were wasting your potential on something that would never succeed. You thought you knew better than I did about my own life and my own capabilities. I returned to my seat, maintaining eye contact with each of them. You decided that your definition of success was the only valid definition, and you tried to force me into a mold that would never fit. Marcus stepped forward with another folder of documents. Ford, we should probably explain the full scope of what we're discussing here. Pinnacle Investments isn't the only major firm interested in partnership deals. We've had preliminary conversations with 6 other companies, all of them offering substantial licensing agreements. Christina Walsh nodded enthusiastically. The market for this level of financial analytics is enormous. Ford's platform could transform how the entire industry operates. I looked at my family, watching as they processed the full magnitude of what they'd misjudged. The irony, of course, is that Morrison and Associates could have been part of this from the beginning. If you'd supported my work instead of undermining it, if you'd invested in my vision instead of ridiculing it, your firm could have had exclusive access to this technology for the past 3 years. Ford, my mother said through her tears, we're sorry. We're so deeply sorry for not believing in you, for not understanding what you were creating. I appreciate that, Sarah, but apologies aren't enough to undo 3 years of damage. The question is whether you're prepared to accept the fundamental changes that would be necessary for me to consider helping you. My father straightened in his chair, his business instincts finally overcoming his emotional shock. What changes are you talking about specifically? First, Morrison and Associates would license my technology platform under terms that I dictate. This isn't a negotiation between equals. This is me offering to save a failing business, using technology that took me years to develop. Second, the management structure of Morrison and Associates would change dramatically. I would assume controlling interest in the company, with final authority over all major strategic decisions. Third, you would publicly acknowledge that your assessment of my work and my potential was wrong, not just to me, not just to our family, but to your clients, your business partners, and your social circle. The terms I was outlining would fundamentally alter the power dynamics that had governed our family for decades. My father, who had always been the unquestioned authority in business matters, would have to accept a subordinate role to the son he'd dismissed as irresponsible. My mother, who had spent years worrying about our family's social reputation, would have to admit publicly that she'd been wrong about her own child. Jessica, who had built her identity around being the successful sibling, would have to acknowledge that her failure brother had far exceeded anything she'd ever accomplished. Ford, Jessica said quietly, what you're asking for. It would change everything about how our family operates. That's exactly the point, Jessica. The way our family has been operating is fundamentally broken. You've spent years treating me as inferior, dismissing my goals, and demanding that I conform to your expectations. If we're going to have any kind of relationship going forward, it has to be based on mutual respect, not family hierarchy. Christina Walsh interjected. Ford, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but what you're describing sounds like more than just a business arrangement. It sounds like you're asking your family to fundamentally reconceptualize their relationship with you. That's exactly what I'm asking for. I'm 27 years old, I've built a successful business from nothing, and I'm about to become one of the youngest multimillionaires in Virginia. I don't need their approval anymore. I don't need their financial support, and I don't need their validation. If they want to be part of my life, it has to be because we can build a relationship based on who I actually am, not who they think I should be. My father was quiet for several long minutes, staring at the financial projections and clearly calculating the implications of what I was proposing. Ford, if we accept these terms, what exactly would the business arrangement look like? Marcus pulled out a comprehensive proposal we'd prepared. Quantum Capital Solutions would provide Morrison and Associates with exclusive access to our financial analytics platform in exchange for a 60% ownership stake in the firm. Your existing clients would immediately benefit from improved investment performance, and you'd be positioned to attract new clients based on your enhanced technological capabilities. The financial projections suggest that Morrison and Associates could triple their revenue within the first year of implementing this technology. I added, instead of facing bankruptcy, you'd be looking at unprecedented growth. My family exchanged glances, clearly trying to process the magnitude of what was being offered. They could save their business, rebuild their financial security, and potentially become more successful than they'd ever imagined. But the price was their pride, their control, and their ability to maintain the illusion that they knew better than I did about success and failure. How long do we have to consider this offer? My father asked. I looked at my watch. The meeting with Pinnacle Investments continues for another hour. Our other potential partners begin arriving at 4 p.m. You have until 5 p.m. to decide whether you want to accept my terms or continue trying to save Morrison and Associates on your own. The deadline wasn't arbitrary. I'd deliberately structured the afternoon to demonstrate that while I was willing to help my family, I wasn't dependent on their acceptance. If they rejected my offer, I had multiple other opportunities that would be equally profitable and far less emotionally complicated. Ford, my mother said, her voice still shaky with emotion. Can we have a few minutes to discuss this privately? Of course. Marcus, why don't we give them some space while we review the Pinnacle proposals? As Marcus, Christina, and I stepped out of the conference room, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. I'd achieved everything I'd dreamed about. I'd proven my success, demonstrated my capabilities, and positioned myself to dictate the terms of our future relationship. But I'd also forced my family to confront the full extent of their misjudgment, and watching their shock and remorse was more painful than I'd expected. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see my family engaged in intense discussion. My father was gesturing emphatically. My mother was crying, and Jessica was shaking her head in apparent disbelief. They were finally grappling with the reality of who I'd become and what they'd lost by rejecting me. In 3 hours, one way or another, our family's future would be decided. Either they would accept my terms and begin building a new relationship based on mutual respect, or they would reject my offer and face the consequences of their pride. The choice was entirely theirs, but the power to determine our family's destiny was finally, completely mine. 20 minutes later, my family called us back into the conference room. My father stood at the head of the table, looking older than I'd ever seen him, but with a dignity that suggested he'd made a difficult but necessary decision. Ford, he began, his voice steady despite the emotional weight of the moment. We've discussed your terms, and we accept them completely. I felt a surge of surprise. I'd expected more resistance, more attempts to negotiate or modify the conditions. All of them? All of them, my mother confirmed, wiping tears from her eyes. Ford, we've spent the last 20 minutes confronting some very painful truths about ourselves and our treatment of you. We realize that we haven't just misjudged your business potential. We've failed you as family members. Jessica looked directly at me, her usual confidence replaced by genuine humility. Ford, I owe you more than an apology. I've spent years treating you like you were less capable than me, less ambitious, less worthy of respect. I was wrong about everything, and I'm ashamed of how I've behaved. My father moved to the presentation screen, studying the financial projections one more time. I built Morrison and Associates over 20 years, and I've watched it crumble over the past 8 months because I was too proud and too stubborn to acknowledge that the industry was changing. You saw those changes coming, you prepared for them, and you built something extraordinary while I was still fighting yesterday's battles. The admission clearly cost him significant effort. Robert Morrison had built his identity around being a successful business leader, someone who understood markets and opportunities better than almost anyone else. Acknowledging that his son had surpassed him professionally was a fundamental shift in how he viewed himself and our relationship. But Ford, he continued, I want you to understand something. Our mistakes about your business don't excuse our failures as your family. Even if your startup had failed, even if your technology had never succeeded, we should have supported your right to pursue your dreams. We should have respected your choices and trusted your judgment about your own life. I felt my carefully maintained emotional control beginning to crack. Throughout this entire confrontation, I'd focused on the vindication, the proof that I'd been right and they'd been wrong. I hadn't expected them to recognize the deeper issue, that family support shouldn't be conditional on success. Marcus stepped forward with the partnership contracts we'd prepared. If we're moving forward with this arrangement, we should formalize the agreements before our other meetings begin. Christina Walsh had been watching our family drama unfold with obvious fascination. Ford, I have to say, this is one of the most remarkable business meetings I've ever attended. The personal dynamics here are quite extraordinary. The personal dynamics are why this arrangement will work, I replied, taking the contracts from Marcus and reviewing them quickly. Business partnerships succeed when all parties understand exactly where they stand with each other. My family and I are finally operating from a foundation of honesty about our respective capabilities and contributions. My father read through the ownership transfer documents, his face showing no surprise at the terms that would reduce his control over the company he'd founded. Ford, I'm curious about something. When did you decide to keep your success secret from us? I didn't plan it initially. The first time you asked about my progress, you were clearly expecting to hear about struggles and failures. When I gave you vague answers about challenges and setbacks, you seemed relieved that your predictions were proving correct. It became easier to let you believe what you wanted to believe than to constantly defend my choices. But why didn't you tell us when the business became obviously successful? I considered the question carefully. Because I needed to prove to myself that I could succeed completely independently, without your validation or approval. And because I suspected that if you knew about my success too early, you'd try to control or redirect it based on your own ideas about business strategy. Jessica signed her section of the agreements, shaking her head in amazement. Ford, you've been living this double life for months, letting us believe you were struggling while you were actually building an empire. How did you maintain that kind of deception? It wasn't deception, Jessica. It was self-protection. Every time we talked about my work, you responded with criticism, doubt, or unsolicited advice. You never asked questions that would have revealed what I was actually accomplishing. You heard what you expected to hear. My mother signed the documents with trembling hands. Ford, what happens now? How do we rebuild our relationship after everything that's happened? We start over, I said simply. We build a new relationship based on who we actually are now, not who we used to be or who we thought each other should be. You'll need to learn to see me as a successful business leader rather than your disappointing son. I'll need to learn to trust that you can respect my judgment and support my decisions. Marcus gathered the signed contracts and began preparing copies for each party. Ford, our 4 o'clock meetings are starting to arrive. Should we continue this discussion later? I looked at my family, seeing a mixture of relief, remorse, and cautious hope in their expressions. Actually, I'd like my family to stay for these meetings. They should see the full scope of what Quantum Capital Solutions has built and what Morrison and Associates is becoming part of. Over the next 2 hours, we met with representatives from 4 major investment firms, 2 technology companies, and 3 hedge funds, all seeking various forms of partnership with Quantum Capital Solutions. My family watched in amazement as I fielded offers worth hundreds of millions of dollars, negotiated complex licensing agreements, and demonstrated a level of business sophistication that none of them had imagined I possessed. During a break between meetings, my father pulled me aside for a private conversation. Ford, I need to say something to you. Watching you operate today, seeing how you handle these negotiations, understanding what you've built, I'm proud of you. Not just because you've been successful, but because you've maintained your integrity throughout everything we've put you through. Thank you, Robert. That means more to me than you might realize. I also need to ask for your forgiveness, not just for disowning you yesterday, but for years of treating you like your dreams and goals were less important than mine. I failed you as a father, and I'm sorry. The apology was unexpected and deeply moving. Despite everything that had happened, despite my anger and resentment, hearing my father acknowledge his mistakes with such honesty meant everything to me. We all made mistakes, I replied. The important thing is that we're finally being honest with each other about who we are and what we want. By 6 p.m., all the meetings had concluded, and we'd secured partnership agreements that would make Quantum Capital Solutions one of the most influential financial technology companies in the country. The integration with Morrison & Associates would begin immediately, with implementation of our platform scheduled for completion within 2 weeks. As we packed up the presentation materials and prepared to leave, Christina Walsh approached me with a final observation. Ford, what you've accomplished today goes far beyond business success. You've managed to save your family's company while fundamentally transforming your family's dynamics. That's quite remarkable. Sometimes crisis creates opportunity for change that wouldn't be possible under normal circumstances, I replied. My family needed to lose everything before they could see clearly enough to build something better. As we left Pinnacle Tower, my family and I walked together toward the parking garage. Our conversation focused on the practical details of implementing the new business arrangements, but underneath the logistics and planning, I could feel something fundamental shifting in our relationships. For the first time in years, we were interacting as equals, as adults who respected each other's capabilities and contributions. The son they'd disowned 24 hours earlier was now their business partner, their financial savior, and their guide into a future none of them could have imagined. The family that had rejected me for pursuing my dreams was now dependent on those dreams for their survival and success. Justice, I realized, sometimes looks exactly like redemption. 6 months later, I stood in the main conference room of the Morrison building, looking out at the Richmond skyline through windows that now bore the updated company logo. Morrison Capital Solutions, a quantum company. The transformation had exceeded every projection we'd made during those tense hours at Pinnacle Tower. The integration of my technology platform had revolutionized Morrison & Associates' investment performance. Within the first quarter, the company had not only retained their remaining clients, but attracted 12 new major accounts, including 3 Fortune 500 companies that had specifically sought them out based on their enhanced analytical capabilities. Revenue had increased by 240%, making Morrison Capital Solutions one of the fastest-growing investment firms in the Southeast. My father entered the conference room carrying the quarterly performance reports we were scheduled to review. At 62, Robert Morrison looked healthier and more energetic than he had in years. The stress that had been slowly killing him had been replaced by the excitement of running a cutting-edge business that was setting new industry standards. Ford, these numbers are incredible, he said, spreading the reports across the conference table. Our clients are seeing returns that exceed the market average by 35%. We have a waiting list of potential new clients that extends 6 months out. I reviewed the financial summaries, feeling deep satisfaction at what we'd accomplished together. How's the team adapting to the new systems? Better than I could have hoped. Jessica has become an absolute expert at explaining our analytical capabilities to potential clients. She's closed 8 major deals in the past 3 months. Jessica had indeed transformed herself professionally. Once she understood the true sophistication of the technology we were implementing, she'd thrown herself into mastering every aspect of the platform. Her background in client relations, combined with her new technical knowledge, had made her one of the most effective sales executives in the industry. And Sarah? I asked about my mother's role in our expanded operations. She's revolutionizing how we approach client relationships. Her charity work taught her how to build trust and long-term connections with wealthy individuals. She's applying those skills to client retention and referral generation. My mother had surprised everyone, including herself. by discovering a talent for strategic relationship building that went far beyond social networking. She developed a comprehensive client care program that had become a model for other firms in our market segment. Marcus entered the conference room with Christina Walsh, who had become our primary contact at Pinnacle Investments. Their partnership with us had been so successful that they'd expanded their collaboration to include joint ventures in 3 other markets. "Ford," Christina said, settling into a chair across from me. "I wanted to discuss the expansion opportunity we've been developing. Pinnacle is interested in licensing your platform for their European operations. The potential revenue stream could reach $50 million annually. That's a significant step up from our current international licensing agreements," I replied, studying the proposal she'd brought. "What kind of support infrastructure would we need to develop?" "We'd want to establish a technology center in London, with additional satellite offices in Frankfurt and Zurich. The staffing requirements would probably double your current team size." The growth opportunities that kept presenting themselves were almost overwhelming. Quantum Capital Solutions had evolved from a startup with 3 employees to a technology company with 47 staff members. We'd outgrown 2 office buildings, and were currently designing a headquarters campus that would accommodate our projected expansion over the next 5 years. My phone buzzed with a text message from Jessica. "Family dinner Sunday? Mom wants to try cooking again, which could be dangerous, but the gesture is sweet." The family dinners had become a monthly tradition, but they bore no resemblance to the tense, judgmental gatherings of the past. We met as adults who genuinely enjoyed each other's company, who respected each other's perspectives, and who had learned to communicate honestly about both business and personal matters. "Ford," my father said, interrupting my thoughts about the text message, "I wanted to talk to you about the succession planning we've been discussing." "What aspects specifically?" "I'm thinking about announcing my retirement at the end of next year. I'll be 63, and frankly, this business has evolved beyond my expertise. You and Jessica have a better understanding of where the industry is heading. The conversation we were having would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier." My father, who had once demanded that I join his business on his terms, was now preparing to transfer leadership to me because he recognized that I'd surpassed his capabilities. "I'd like to maintain an advisory role," he continued, "but the day-to-day operations should be handled by people who understand both the technology and the market trends that are shaping our future." "I think that's a wise decision, Robert. But I'd also like Jessica to consider taking the role of Chief Operating Officer. She's developed a remarkable grasp of client relationship management, and she understands the technology well enough to bridge the gap between our analytical capabilities and our sales operations." Christina Walsh smiled at our family dynamics. "It's fascinating to watch how your relationships have evolved. 6 months ago, you were barely speaking to each other. Now you're planning a succession strategy that leverages everyone's strengths. The transformation hadn't been easy for any of us. My family had struggled with accepting their new roles, and I'd struggled with learning to trust their commitment to change. We'd all attended family therapy sessions that had been alternately productive and painful, working through years of accumulated resentment and misunderstanding. The breakthrough had come when my mother made a suggestion during one particularly difficult session. "Instead of trying to fix our old relationship, why don't we build a completely new one? Why don't we start over as the people we are now, rather than the people we used to be?" That shift in perspective had freed all of us from the weight of past grievances. We stopped trying to repair damaged family patterns and started creating healthier ones, based on mutual respect, honest communication, and appreciation for each other's unique contributions. My father had been the most changed by this process. The man who had once dismissed my dreams as impractical fantasies now sought my advice on everything from strategic planning to technology investments. He'd learned to see me not as his disappointing son, but as a business leader whose vision and capabilities had saved everything he'd worked to build. "Ford," he said now, returning to the succession planning discussion, "there's something else I want to address. I've been thinking about making a public statement acknowledging my mistakes in how I treated your startup. I think it would be good for the business community to understand that established executives need to be more open to innovation from unexpected sources." The offer was generous and completely unnecessary. "Robert, you don't need to do that. What matters is how we move forward. not how we acknowledge the past. I disagree. I think it's important for other parents and business leaders to hear this story. How many other talented young people are being discouraged from pursuing innovative ideas because the older generation can't see past their own assumptions? Marcus looked up from the financial reports he'd been reviewing. Actually, Ford, there might be significant value in sharing your story publicly. We've been approached by several business schools about case study development. Your experience could become a teaching tool about family business dynamics and technological disruption. The idea of turning our family's transformation into an educational resource was intriguing. What kind of format are they suggesting? Harvard Business School wants to develop a comprehensive case study about succession planning and family businesses during periods of technological change. Stanford is interested in the entrepreneurship aspects of building a startup while managing family expectations. Christina Walsh leaned forward with interest. Pinnacle would definitely support that kind of educational initiative. We're constantly dealing with family businesses that struggle to adapt to technological disruption. Your story provides a model for how those transitions can be managed successfully. As our meeting concluded, and everyone prepared to leave, I remained in the conference room, thinking about the incredible journey that had brought us to this point. 6 months ago, I'd received text messages disowning me from my family. Today, I was planning business expansion strategies with the same people who had once dismissed my dreams as worthless fantasies. The transformation hadn't just been about proving them wrong or demonstrating my capabilities. It had been about creating space for all of us to grow beyond the limitations of our old relationship patterns. My success had given me the power to dictate new terms for our interactions, but the real victory had been learning to use that power constructively rather than punitively. My phone buzzed with another message, this time from Marcus. The IPO pricing came back from the underwriters. Quantum Capital Solutions is now valued at $450 million. Congratulations! You're officially one of the youngest billionaires in American history. I stared at the message, feeling a complex mix of pride, gratitude, and responsibility. The financial success was gratifying, but what mattered more was what we'd built beyond the monetary value. We'd created a business that was improving people's lives, a family relationship based on mutual respect, and a model for how conflict can be transformed into collaboration. As I prepared to leave the office, I thought about the text message I'd sent 6 months ago in response to my family's disownment. Okay, that single word had represented my complete acceptance of their rejection and my determination to succeed independently of their approval. Now I understood that the real power of that moment hadn't been in accepting their rejection, but in refusing to be limited by their inability to see my potential. By saying okay to their disownment, I'd freed myself to become the person I was meant to be, rather than the person they thought I should be. The panic call that had come 24 hours later wasn't the beginning of my victory. It was simply the moment when my family finally caught up to who I'd already become. Sunday's family dinner would be another opportunity to celebrate not just our business success, but our success at becoming the family we'd never been able to be before. We'd learned that love isn't about demanding conformity or imposing expectations. It's about supporting each other's authentic selves and celebrating each other's unique contributions to the world. Sometimes, the greatest gift you can give someone is the space to prove you wrong about their limitations. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to exceed everyone's expectations, including your own. As I locked up the office and headed home to my penthouse apartment, I smiled, thinking about how much had changed since that devastating text message 6 months ago. The son they'd disowned for chasing impossible dreams had become the leader of their family's future. The technology they'd dismissed as worthless had become the foundation of their success. The relationship they'd thought was irreparably broken had become stronger and healthier than any of us had imagined possible. The story that had begun with rejection and pain had become a testament to the power of persistence, vision, and the transformative potential of authentic relationship. It was a story I looked forward to sharing with business schools, family counselors, and anyone else who might benefit from understanding that sometimes the greatest failures can become the foundation for the greatest successes. Have you ever had a moment when someone's rejection of your dreams actually freed you to achieve something greater than you originally imagined? I'd love to hear your stories about how you've transformed setbacks into comebacks, how you've turned other people's doubts into fuel for your determination. Please share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, I'd be grateful if you'd like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear that their dreams are worth pursuing regardless of who believes in them. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes, the most powerful word you can say in response to rejection is simply, okay. Your future success will speak louder than any argument you could make today.